What's the most badass thing you've accidentally said in the heat of the moment? Big burly former Marine mercenary from Iraq was back stateside. Huge freaking mountain of a man. We came to face each other in one of the narrow corridors of the office where one of us was gonna have to turn sideways. Neither of us turned, but we stopped. I'm 6 feet 1, 260 and he still towered over me. He was a nice guy, but still a little conditioned, I guess you could say, or mentally unhinged. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You feeling froggy?" It truly was like something out of a movie. Without blinking I replied, "You better jump." We both cracked up and turned sideways, while the office breathed a collective sigh of relief. I am a 4th grade teacher and one day I was up at the board and struggling to remember how to spell a particular word. I was trying to make light of it, telling the kids that sometimes adults need help with spelling too. One student replied, "It is because you were poorly educated. But don't worry, we are poorly educated too." Double whammy. What's worse is I think that kid was trying to make you feel better. At work, project management undercut and mismanaged a project so badly, they pushed getting minimum viable product out with the goal to roll out improvements later. Product released, they all patted themselves on the back and moved on. Then that minimum viable product broke. In a meeting we had with our directors about how it's so broken and the cost to fix it etc. No cost too big. Unlimited manpower etc. I asked how come we couldn't afford to do it right, but we can afford to do it twice? I'll never forget the moment a family walked into the local pub I was working at while I was working. This big king of the grill bald alpha patriarch dad type and his wife and kids came through. I said, "Welcome. Where would you like to sit?" and he snapped back, "Well, a table would be nice." And without missing a beat at all I replied, "Actually we usually sit on the chairs here." I'll never forget the satisfaction of that moment or the look on his face. You are the alpha dad now. My uncles were bitching about my dad, so I walked into the conversation and told them it wasn't polite to talk about people behind their backs. My uncle turned to me and said I shouldn't interrupt when the men are speaking, and completely out of character I replied, "I don't see any men in here." Boy did I get some crap that day, but that's how I knew I won that exchange. I worked in cell phone sales for a few years and a woman came in with a fairly new flip phone. This was 2018, we just still sold them. She was complaining cause one of the sides of the screen was dangling off and said she didn't do anything, it just snapped, and demanded a new phone. I told her that looks like physical damage and we don't have any coverage for that since you didn't buy our phone protection warranty. She insisted it wasn't physical damage and the phone just sucks and broke itself. She started freaking out and calling me all kinds of names and swinging her phone in my face, and then the top half of the phone literally snapped off and landed on the counter in front of me. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "Well, that was definitely physical damage." She lost her crap at my comment and it was weirdly satisfying. I didn't realize the nature of my comment when I wrote it, but in high school, one of my teachers did end of the year anonymous evaluations. Everyone hated him. And I understood why, but I still did well in his class. I wrote, "I don't have any critiques about your teaching, but I think you should work on being a better person." When I was 12, my older sister had a boy over for Thanksgiving dinner. She dated lots of douches, but this guy took the cake. Big, brash, annoying donghead who was rude to her and basically everyone. As we sat down for dinner, before we were about to say what we were thankful for, he says inaudible moron grunts, "How looks like I'm seated at the head of the table. Must be important," with a huge crap eating grin. Without pausing I gestured to my dad seated opposite him and said, "Actually my dad is at the head of the table. You're the butthole." My mom scolded me for swearing at the table, but years later told me her and my dad thought it was hilarious. Forensic biology professor brings out a fresh human brain as a surprise to a stunned class. "You have no idea what I had to go through to get this. The skull? The janitor stopped by at the wrong time." Working retail, Karen once told me she hoped I die. I was so into work mode that I blankly responded, "I mean, we all die. That's not much of a threat." Maybe it was my lack of intimidation or blank stare, but that really shut her up. After 4 years in an abusive relationship and 1 year of an abusive marriage, I told my ex that I wanted a divorce. He told me that I couldn't divorce him or I'd go to heck. My response was, "Well, I guess I'll see you there." I then kicked him out of my house. for which he had never paid a dime in bills, and told him to call his mom for a plane ticket. Not the most crazy story here, but it felt good. I was around 17 or 18 and getting my first filling at the dentist. They pumped me up with nitrous oxide for pain and to help me relax during the procedure. Dentist came back and asked me, "How are you feeling?" All I said was I don't, and he lost his crap and cracked up for what seemed like 20 minutes before he could pull himself together. I also started cracking up because of the laughing gas, and his laugh was infectious. So we were both just sitting there in the room laughing, and all his assistants came by and were very confused. I worked at Target back in college in a stocking job where we had to be there at like 4-5 am to unload trucks. One morning I overslept a bit and walked to the unpacking line about 10 minutes late eating a breakfast bar. The boss stormed over and started loudly berating me in front of everyone for being late. As he was going on, I was listening and taking bites of the bar without much expression, mainly because I was so dang tired. It finally bothered him that I was disrespectfully chewing during the yelling, and he stopped mid-sentence, held out his hand, and said, "Give me that dang thing." It just happened that I only had one bite left, so I took it, handed him the wrapper, and said thanks with a mouthful of food. He paused and started laughing at the ridiculous response to his bitching. We were buddies after that. Not me, my daughter. This boy at school called her retarded. Her response? "No, I'm autistic." I don't know what your freaking excuse is. She was in 6th grade. I was pretty shocked when I got that phone call. She usually doesn't say things to people. Young male, traveling with a bunch of other males. Border Patrol. We were being searched for drug smuggling. Border Patrol agent, "You know I have the authority to cavity search you." Me, somehow without skipping a beat. "Sure you might, but neither of us would enjoy it and you wouldn't find anything. Off the hook. No fingers in my butt." I'm a writer and I do a bit of stand-up comedy. As such, people tend to introduce me to new people as a comedian, writer, etc. So I was outside a bar smoking with a friend of a friend. He then introduced to one of his friends. His friend was dressed like Liam Gallagher from Oasis and seemed to exude a bit of a cocky, sneery manner. The introduction went thusly: "Friend of friend, Mr. Gallagher, this is Writer of Wrongs. He is a comedian." Mr. Gallagher looks me up and down. "Comedian, eh? Does that mean you think you're funny?" Writer of Wrongs: "No, it means everyone else does." I literally do not know where it came from. I didn't think about the response. It just came out, and it is hands down the greatest thing I've ever said. I was accused of being passive aggressive. I replied, "Which part sounded passive? I don't ever want to come across as passive." At work at a company meeting, someone was presenting something cool they volunteered to work on and finished. They then explained things they thought they could do better in a self-deprecating way, and a bunch of other people started railing into his work with petty criticism. It was definitely good work, though, and a thought just hit me, so I blurted it out. "Sometimes done is the best feature." A bunch of people laughed and then the criticism stopped. People gave him kudos and we moved on. Not really amazing, but I was surprised this thought somehow came out fully formed, like it was some phrase I've been saying for decades. I guess I was just realizing how many people don't finish anything they start, so done suddenly seemed like a pretty dang good feature. Give the man some credit for finishing the dang thing. There was this one extremely attractive girl in my Com 101 class in college. One day, for a project where we interviewed other students, I was partnered with her. We ended up not finishing our questions in class, so I asked her if I could meet her somewhere to finish interviewing her. She said yes. Fast forward to the next day, I meet her after her dance group finishes rehearsal. I knock through the last few questions, and the final one which I ask is, "What do you perceive the future to hold?" She replies, "I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I have no idea what the future holds." So I say, "Well, if you don't know what you're having for dinner, do you want to have dinner with me?" She laughed, said yes, and though we only hooked up that night, I still look back on that day as one of the best dating stories I've had yet. I worked at a bookstore and a customer asked me how often do the periodicals come out. I deadpan periodically, and he asked to speak to my manager. Worth it. I was in an acting class in college, and we were doing a scene where a couple was having a big drawn out fight. Multiple pairs went through the scene, and I studied it pretty hard, so I knew all the lines. We're about halfway through our performance when my partner clearly forgets what her line is, and because everyone was doing that scene, they could tell she had forgotten as well. Her next line was supposed to be, "Well, I'm sorry I asked. I'm not usually a quick thinker on my feet, but I just filled a second or two of awkward silence with 'I bet you're sorry you asked,'" and continued on with my lines. Not overly badass per se, but the class and professor loved it and all laughed. Probably the only quick-witted thing I've ever done in my life. I work in waste management. I'm also a rather small person. Like, they don't make clothes at Old Navy in my size small. I was wheeling a stack of drums out to our loading dock, navigating pretty much purely on instinct since I couldn't see over or around them. Lo and behold, there's someone there chatting with the shipping people. I run straight into him. I'm surrounded by everyone in shipping, some fairly big dudes, and I feel amazingly embarrassed. I leaned around the drums to look at the guy I hit, and without even thinking, said, "The frick you want me to do? See through him?" Everyone burst out laughing and the guy even opened the door to the dock for me. Every time I see him now he pretends to duck. Me and my girlfriend at the time were having a discussion about her going back to school. She kept putting it off every semester, and one day she got angry at me trying to get her to actually go back, not just talk about it, and she yelled Rome wasn't built in a day, and I responded, "Yeah, but it was built." And a decade later I still think of that. At a party a few years back, someone stole my friend's purse. Her boyfriend found the guys who took it and got it back for her, but he was still in an angry, drunken rage and was continuing to escalate the situation when he was well outnumbered. My friend finds me and says, "I'm afraid, boyfriend, is about to get into a fight. I need your help. Stop him, please." I stand up, and I tell her, "I can't promise you I can stop him from fighting, but I can promise you I won't let him lose," before walking off to find him. Ultimately, no fight actually broke out, and I didn't realize that I had basically said a cheesy one-liner until after the fact when my friend told me how intense that line was. I didn't mean for it to sound so dramatic. I just wanted to let her know I wouldn't let him get his butt kicked. I didn't mean to make it sound like I was about to demolish 3 guys by myself like I'm some sort of action hero. I just imagined you taking off your sunglasses after saying that line and dramatic music starting. Back in high school I was a slow fat kid. For pay we jog about a km to the beach, have a swimming lesson then jog back. I was the last one back to the school grounds and the teacher was standing at the gate. He told me that cause I was too slow he was going to lock the gate and I'd have to jog to the next one 200 meters away. I said that I'd consider him locking me out of school grounds to be a suspension and just go home. He let me in straight away. Kinda wished he'd tried calling my bluff so I could have followed through and just gone home. IDK about badass. But years ago I worked at a Hard Rock cafe, and we often had pre-shift server meetings outdoors on a patio, and my wild boss was droning on about us selling more overpriced plastic cups. I was staring off at the spinning globe on top of the building that says Save the Planet on it. I interrupted my boss by blurting out, "If Hard Rock is trying to save the planet, why do we waste so much paper?" Which was really directed at my managers, who had a hard-on for printing out stupid memos. They somehow didn't realize it was about them specifically, and passed the comment up the food chain, which ended up resulting in the entire company changing their payroll system to paperless. Globally, as a reward I was given a pin shaped like a light bulb that said "bright idea" on it. Thanks I guess. Go wait with mommy, daddy might be going back to jail again. Guy pushed my 5-year-old daughter at the fish store and she started crying. When he heard me say that he ran out of the store. I've never been to jail before. We had a overly dramatic neighbor who always claimed she was sick and dying. My mom came to see my kids in the middle of battling stage 4 lung cancer. The neighbor pulled her. "Hi Rita, so glad to see you. Did Jason tell you that I am dying?" My mom looked right at her, smiled and said, "Me too, dear, but not today." Never more proud of her. At a family vacation, my grandmother was giving me grief for not remembering her birthday. I've never been good with birthdays. After telling me it was the password to her iPhone, she wanted me to take a picture with it, which is why I needed the password. While she was distracted, I opened up the settings, changed her password to my birth date, and then set her phone down. Q 15 minutes later, she's trying to get into her phone and it's not working. Suspecting mischief, she grumpily asks me if I've changed the password to her phone in front of our entire family. I admit that I did. Well, what is it? She asked impatiently. It's my birth date. She sat there in stunned silence for about 15 seconds, not being able to remember my birthday, before our family exploded laughing. It was a good time. Biggest no reverse card ever. Kind of a proud moment for me. I was always really shy in school, had very few friends, was bullied a lot. My mum passed away when I was 14 and I kept it to myself, not wanting sympathy or more bullying for it. Someone found out, not sure how. They then said in one of our mutual classes that I should just die like my stupid mum did. The whole class heard and was shocked. Even the teacher was like a deer in headlights. I immediately got up to leave, but before I left, I turned to her, got up close and said, I've seen what cancer does to people. It hurts. And I would never wish that on anyone, not even you. And I turned and walked out. A lot of people have some respect for the fact that I stood up to myself. Although people then knew my mum had died, which wasn't great. I ended up leaving the school a few months later anyways, but I was glad that I stood up for myself. A couple months ago, my now ex-friend was telling me all the things that were wrong with me, and she finished it with, and at least I don't have to wear makeup to look pretty. I was so fed up with her crap, so I responded, at least I am capable of looking pretty. She was speechless and I felt like such a badass because this was the first time I ever stood up to her. I was eating McDonald's with a few friends and I started choking. The only thing I managed to say in the whole ordeal was I'm McChicken. A long time ago I was walking down a side street in a medium-sized town with my girlfriend. A car was parked ahead, with the front of the car facing us as we approached. I could see two kids, maybe in their late teens, and instantly could tell they were likely going to say something as my GF was rather attractive. As soon as we come up next to them I hear, hey baby, ditch the zero and come hang with the hero. I could feel my blood boil, but I kept my cool and calmly said, sorry buddy, I'm not gay, and don't call my girlfriend a zero. The dude's friend started laughing at him and my girlfriend made a sarcastic crying face, then we both started to laugh. Was doing a university project, had to do a large presentation in front of maybe 50-60 other students about a possible business of manufacturing an education toy for kids. It was a bit of a train wreck, as no one else in the group had rehearsed or even read the script. As with all presentations, they asked for questions at the end, and I stepped up to answer questions. There was one guy at the back that always asked awkward questions, like what if someone were to injure themselves and sue you, or have you factored in matching employees' pensions? It was meant to be a fun project for first year students. They weren't expecting tons of detail. When it came to asking questions, I volunteered to answer them. The guy opened right away asking awkward questions, but he misjudged how serious I am with details. I asked the lecturer hosting the session if I could load up my spreadsheet. He allowed it. That's when the guy realized he had asked the wrong guy. I had made an automatic spreadsheet that would work out how many people were needed, how many machines, what hours people could work, rolling production over 24 hours and overlapping shifts to ensure it all worked at maximum efficiency. Add to that it worked out costs, complying to the law exactly, including pension contributions, tax amounts, holidays, time off work due to illness etc., insurance, rent and more. When it came to asking his group questions, I asked him every single thing he had overlooked legally, like time off for work, pay increases etc. On the way out the other groups gave me a smile as it had shut him right up. I actually said nothing. I was on my motorcycle in traffic, on a wet overpass with short jersey walls. Guy behind me was driving a bit too fast and slammed on his brakes, sliding into me, but no damage as he was going slow enough to touch and push me about 5 feet before finally coming to a stop. The angle had me going straight forward so I did not fall. Had it been much faster I would have been thrown over the edge to my death. So obviously I was not happy. I turned off the engine, got off the bike and slowly walked over to the driver that hit me. It's only a few feet, and when he saw me coming to him, he furiously started raising his manual window, so I could just see him struggling to pump the winder. When I got there I just knocked on his window, pointed at him, and turned around and walked away. He looked terrified. I didn't think about it until later. A guy you just hit in a car wearing a black helmet, with shaded visor, black heavy thick jacket, black heavy riding pants, road crafted jacket and pants, black thick and metal studded gloves, and black leather boots knocks on your window and points at you for being a supreme dumbass. I had no idea. I just wanted to talk to him, be a bit angry but tell him I was okay, then take a sec to verify my bike was okay as well. Around the time I was 12, I was at a family party with my dad and aunt's uncles. My dad told me that one of my uncles owned several bars. My response? Oh, it's good that he got into a business that he knows something about. I had no idea what I really was saying. I thought I was giving him a compliment. When I was 7, some girls were bullying me at school. I just learned the word mutual. One of the bullies said we don't like you and I said the feeling's mutual and then walked off. I'm 37 now and I still remember it. I used to work in a preschool and this kid was being an absolute snot, telling kids he didn't like them, giving them thumbs down. Then, he tried it on a 3-year-old. Kid, I don't like you. 3-year-old. Well, my mommy likes me. It shut him right up. Got to work one morning, my chosen football team had thrashed my boss's chosen team. I gave him a load of crap for it. Humorously of course, my boss is great. He gave me some crap back and told me to do a stock take on all items we have beginning with the letter C. I pointed at him and said, 1. Luckily, he took it the correct way and laughed a lot. There's no way you're this much of a butthole naturally. You must go home and practice. I said this to a co-worker who was throwing a fit and bullying a quieter co-worker because he was peed off. He had a habit of just being a giant douche anytime things didn't go his way. This comment peed him off so much he just stormed into his office and stayed there the rest of the day. Win for the rest of us. He was in there practicing some more. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.